I've discussed this before, and I think a lot of you guys know my stance on high-dose TRT, or generally high-dose testosterone. There's a point at which, depending on how much you're dosing, you're really not doing TRT anymore. You're on effectively a mild steroid cycle. But I've become a proponent of that for a subset of individuals. That 900 nanograms per deciliter total test and at the top of the range free test is just not doing anything for them. These are mostly the sexual dysfunction people that have weak pelvic floor muscles, which, by the way, testosterone itself, androgens, enhance the strength of the ischiocavernous muscle and the bulbocavernosous muscle. These are muscles that effectively allow you to trap blood in the male organ. Some of these guys might have endothelial disruption or impairment, which we know that dihydrotestosterone is the only androgen capable of fixing, and you need a lot of actual testosterone to convert enough to DHT to get enough DHT to fix that problem. And a host of other fucking problems. Again, you got people that have fatigue syndromes that you can't quantify otherwise on the blood work, that there's no discernible metric that explains why they feel the way they feel other than long-standing hypogonadism. Like in those cases, for sure, guys are going to need higher levels of testosterone, not just like 200 milligrams a week of cypionate, but they might need to be 3,000, 4,000 nanograms per deciliter to get enough free tests, some around 900 or 1,000 for periods, and it's probably in the interest of your health, best to cycle at that point, cycle up, cycle down, cycle up, but periods for repair. One of the things that I dislike about advice regarding TRT is a one-size-fits-all suggestion, or like dogmatic ideas that for TRT, like everybody should just stick with 800 to 1,000 total test. And, you got to figure out how to dial in therein. And that's just going to be good for you. Because again, people have fucking sexual dysfunction. People have longstanding hypogonadism. There's so much negative shit that happens, especially at the tissue level when you have androgen deprivation. That's in the androgen deprivation literature. When people do androgen deprivation for prostate cancer, there's all manner of things that go wrong with specifically sexual function. I mean, we're talking about smooth muscle destruction in the penis. So you don't want that. So if people are coming from that state, higher doses of testosterone are normally warranted. But what I want us to do in this video is just explore, should you be on TRT at 800 to 1,000 total test, free test at the top of the range or slightly over, and nothing more? And is that where everybody needs to be? Or are there cases where people just need to be at 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 total tests, full-blown steroid cycles in order to get alleviation of their symptoms? Before we start the video, look, Cortex Labs is a performance optimization and hormone consulting company for men. We've got a range of different products ranging from the source list, any anabolic you can think of, including DHT, high-potency DHT gel, test of all esters. Get it down in the description of this video. It's saving a lot of people a lot of time, money, and getting people exactly what they want to fix their problems. Torque Stack, it's basically like Adderall without the side effects. Still buy one, get one free right now. Code and the link is down in the description of this video. Lastly, I'm a coach on TRT protocol restructuring and long-standing sexual dysfunction. You can hire me for either a one-off consult call or an ongoing package. You can find all that stuff in the description of this video and hire me for any of that stuff in under a minute at livecortex.com. Like, what I want to do to start is I want to take us to this video right here on YouTube. It's called Testosterone Replacement Therapy, TRT, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with Dr. Osborne. This is on a channel from a dude who talks about hormones, androgens, all matter of cool shit. This guy, you should absolutely subscribe to his channel. His name is James Scrage. But he brings on a doc who I've talked about before, or at least I've featured some of his content, his position specifically on estradiol, that it kind of needs to be in that small window of 25 to 35 for most guys that are on testosterone replacement therapy, where they talk about like some of the drawbacks of higher doses, and kind of give you guys my take on Doc's position, Dr. Osborne's position on higher doses of testosterone, because his position, somewhat antithetical to mine, and he really doesn't factor in sexual dysfunction, some of these longstanding issues from hypogonadism. So I'd like to start that discussion by beginning this video. So sit back, relax. Let's get into it.
What is the proper definition of TRT? Everyone throws the word around, so what should TRT mean?
To me, it's like a locker room term. I don't use that term at all, which in my mind have the connotation of somebody selling you some sort of testosterone or some sort of alternate to testosterone, some sort of steroid in a locker room. As we get older, as you know, hormones falter, okay? But there's sort of like this symphony, if you will. So it's not just testosterone that you have to replace, or at least have to look at. You're replacing the entire span of hormones that govern our physiology.
Right, which can include obviously thyroid, down the list, depending on what may be out of balance that you're trying to optimize for a person's longevity or health.
Absolutely. Estrogen, progesterone. There are a whole host of hormones that you can sort of tweak, turn the knobs and the dials in order to make somebody a better version of themselves, in order to optimize their physiology, their biochemistry.
So what does proper testosterone optimization look like versus someone going to a doctor and it being prescribed, but now all of a sudden it's doctor prescribed enhancement because instead of maybe more natural testosterone levels, now all of a sudden their testosterone levels are jacked at 1,000 and above?
I don't believe in doing that. There are a whole host of potential side effects from testosterone replacement. Things like hypertension, thickening of the blood, which can predispose you to stroke and heart attack, thickening of the left ventricle, which can predispose you to hypertension, heart attacks, all sorts of other problems.
All right, so I just want to couch it there for a second and talk about a lot of those things. Now, look, there's obviously credence to the notion that on TRT, on higher doses, where you're pushing mild steroid cycle levels of testosterone, that you could have hypertension, right? If a person isn't otherwise healthy and they eat too much salt or they don't do cardio or their physiology is somewhat in shambles because of how they treat their body or how they've treated it over the years, then yeah, I mean, your blood pressure might shoot up to 160 over 90, which is not good and is going to predispose you potentially to some of these pretty terrible things that might happen, like stroke or heart attack. However, I would say that very obviously, like I've seen in my coaching practice as well as with my own blood work and my own blood pressure readings, well, that if the lifestyle stuff is in order, then you don't get hypertension from higher doses of TRT, even cycle doses of TRT in the 200 to 500 milligram a week range. At 500 milligrams a week of testosterone enthate, my blood pressure was like 117 over 65. I mean, it barely got over 120 over 80. It would never even get close to 80 on the bottom number, you know, and that's because I'm running every day or every other day. I'm going to the gym. I'm drinking a lot of water. I eat salt, but not a ton of salt. I'm not just like eating pizzas every day. I treat my body right so I don't have to worry about hypertension. At the same time, relative to left ventricular hypertrophy, I think that's somewhat of an overblown, just sort of repeated, constantly used, I wouldn't call it a fear-monger tactic, but it is something that people that are perhaps lacking originality or that are just being a little conservative on the matter, as they probably should be as MDs, like to repeat. I recently got an echo because I'm 40 years old. I've been on high doses of androgens. I've been on TRT, and I was very curious to see what is going on specifically with the ventricles, the mitral valve, the aortic valve, whether there's regurgitation, stenosis, any of these kinds of things. I didn't anticipate any major problems. And after many years on TRT, always about 1,000 nanograms per deciliter plus on just TRT, and then a 4-month recent cycle of a half a gram of testosterone per week, my echo looked fucking beautiful. No regurgitation, no mitral valve, aortic valve problems, but specifically at normal functioning and thickness of the ventricles, including the left ventricle. So again, that's just me, but plenty of other bodybuilders, et cetera, that have been on steroids. I mean, we're talking about big steroid doses like Chase Irons, Vigorous Steve, many other people have showed their echocardiograms, you know, the ultrasounds of their hearts, and they don't have any of these things. So, you know, listen, I think there's a way to manage the potential negative outcomes that could come from high-dose testosterone. And you can't just blanket say that above 1,000 is going to lead to hypertension, thickening of the blood, and fucking left ventricular hypertrophy. That's just not true.
Somebody who's 25 years old comes to the office and says, I want to be on hormone replacement or TRT. That's already a red flag. It's frowned upon. It is heavily scrutinized by the law, or under the law, I should say. In addition to the fact that males who are on any of these anabolics at an early age potentially it places them at risk for being permanently sterile or having significant difficulties fathering children.
All right, so I just want to stop it there and quick touch on the fertility thing. Listen, everything Doc says is correct to a degree, and I acknowledge that. Right? Again, there are some people that will get hypertension because they're fucking treating their body like shit, and potentially there's people that if they're on steroid cycles for 20 straight years that might have, a little increase in left ventricular size or thickening of the aortic or mitral valves. Like who knows? But relative to fertility, the same is true. I mean, yes, if you're on just TRT and you don't use enclomiphene or HCG or maybe like pulse doses of Kisspeptin throughout the day, actual dihydrotestosterone or Proviron, all things known to aid in fertility, then no, you're largely going to shut down intratesticularly, and your fertility is going to be next to nothing, if not nothing. However, there are cases in probably the literature, I haven't actually searched for that, but there are anecdotals on the web in the help forums of people on just TRT, no HCG, getting their wives pregnant. So I would argue that that's obviously a lower end, a lower amount of the fucking population here, but that does happen. Alternatively, though, using things like enclomiphene, using things like Proviron, but importantly using human chorionic gonadotropin, we're able to regain fertility in men and have them get their wives pregnant. Now, if you've been on steroids for 20 straight years with minimal cycling, or maybe cycling 1 year off at a time, but still long durations of anabolic steroids, you're probably going to have more atrophy of the testicular tissues, and that's going to require hefty doses of 5,000 IU to 10,000 IU of HCG a week, along with potentially some recombinant FSH in order to get your wife pregnant. Well, that's possible. But regarding TRT, we're not, most guys on TRT just go on a little bit of HCG, get their wives pregnant. Okay. That happens a good degree of the time. I've seen it in coaching. You see it in the help forums. So again, we want to strike a good balance between warning people about the fertility issues that could come about with TRT, but also not scaring people with excessively superfluous warnings. Right? You got to be practical about this. Practical. Let's be practical. What does the literature say? What are people's experiences? We can't just give blanket statements that scare people, or on the other side, blanket statements that everyone needs to be at 3,000 total tests. I mean, you got to look at this practically, and you got to look at it at much more of a granular level.
So compare and contrasting someone who comes in 40 years old and says, hey, I just want to feel more energetic. I want my libido to be back where it would. What's that range of testosterone where you would like to see that individual? And in contrast, what would it look like if someone was on that enhanced side?
Just let's say you're on 200 milligrams of cypionate, which is sort of a standard dose. Some people do it twice a week, 100 milligrams. An individual like that is going to be running on day 6 or day 7, somewhere around 1,000, and that's their total testosterone. Maybe a little lower, maybe a little higher. So just let's say it's a LabCorp request. They will run high 900s, some of them run 1,100, and they vary. You're not going any higher. That's where you're going. Anybody else is super physiologic, and we are reducing the dose.
Okay, for some of you that are confused about what is being said right now, let's just make that clear that this is nadir dosing and this is at the trough. Doc said at day 6 or day 7, you're at 900, 1,000, which means you're peaking at 1,700, 1,500, 1,800, 2,000. I've seen guys peaking all the way up to 2,500 nanograms per deciliter on 200 milligrams of testosterone injected at once. So you're still peaking, you're still getting into the pretty super physiologic range with a 200 milligram standard dose if you're injecting once a week, and then you're troughing back down to between 900 and 1,000. A lot of people trough at 600 on that dose, by the way.
I don't think naturally, even in my 20s, I don't think my testosterone was probably ever at 1,000. So what would be that comparison, my 48-year-old self at 1,000 versus my 25-year-old self who might have been 700, 800? Wouldn't you still consider this 48-year-old version of myself now enhanced?
And that's a good question, and the answer is slightly you are, yeah. And the thing about it is that a bad thing? With medicine, the first thing you learn in medical school is first do no harm.
Right.
Okay, first do no harm. So if an individual feels great, their brain is working great, they're muscular, they're strong, they're motivated to go to the gym, which is a big reason to put somebody on testosterone, right? They're motivated, they're spontaneous, they have that virility back. If they feel good at 900 and they're not hypertensive, I'm not having to go and have them phlebotomized, take blood from them every 3 months. They're left ventricle isn't thick, their prostate isn't enlarged. They may be, yes, enhanced. Is there something wrong with that? In my opinion, no. But I would make the argument that you're probably a better version of yourself at a total testosterone of 900 than you were when you were 25. So I don't have any problem with that. I really don't. Do I have a problem with you coming back here and being 1500? That's not going to happen in this clinic.
All right, so right at the end there, you heard what he said, right? You know, do I have a problem with you coming to my clinic and being at 1500, presumably on trough? That's not going to happen in my clinic. Now, here's where I'm going to part ways with Doc. And I'm not sure that Doc gets people that have got serious sexual dysfunction. I guess that's, I think it's pretty likely that a doc in the case of a TRT clinic is getting people with libido and erection issues. It's one of the primary fucking reasons that people go on TRT to begin with. But perhaps Doc hasn't marketed himself, as I have on this channel, as the person that fixes sexual dysfunction. I mean, that's like 95% of the stuff that I get is erection issues, libido issues on TRT, coming off cycles, not on TRT, but wants to get on TRT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Androgen deprivation, PFS, PSSC, these kinds of things. In those cases, a good degree of these people, not all of them. I mean, some of them can function perfectly at 800-900 if estrogen falls in range, and that's just what they need. They have enough androgens. It might take some time, but then they get their erections back, their spontaneous erections, morning nocturnal erections, erections for sex. They're strong. They feel good. They want to go to the gym. You know, full physiological upgrade when you replace testosterone. I mean, it is like that for everybody, generally speaking, regardless. But for a good degree of those cases, I mean, dude, I got a guy that's got to be on 100 milligrams of prop every other day. You know, that's 350 milligrams of testosterone a week. It's a mild steroid cycle. Now, prop is in and out of the system, so it's not like it's sticking around constantly like longer esters, like testosterone enanthate or testosterone cypionate. So that affects hematological physiology, brain physiology, otherwise physiology, cardiac physiology a lot differently. Get a giant peak, and then, you know, it starts to exit your system. It's not sticking around constantly. But for those guys, they need that much DHT, which, by the way, the clinical literature, various well-respected medical journals on androgen deprivation, on 5-alpha reductase inhibition, they validate the notion that androgens, specifically dihydrotestosterone, are the only chemicals capable of reviving endothelial function, blood vessel function, nitric oxide synthesis, and signaling in the penile vasculature. High doses of androgens are necessary for these individuals. So like I'd be curious to see what Doc thinks about a guy going to his clinic that has post-finasteride syndrome, that took finasteride, now has a completely numb erection, doesn't get an erection, but if he could get it, it would be completely numb, zero desire for sex, can't date, hasn't woke up with morning wood for 4 fucking years, and is generally weak, debilitated, has changes in his facial structure as a result of lack of androgens. All manner of terrible things happen that likely, presumably, based on the scientific literature, has smooth muscle destruction, collagen deposition in the penis, downregulated nitric oxide synthesis or signaling, almost definitely weakened pelvic floor muscles, ischiocavernous, bulbocavernous muscles, which, you know, is preventing them from keeping blood trapped in the penis, and a good degree of these guys have actual venous leakage. Would Doc suggest 900 total tests? Because I can tell you from coaching experience, 900 total tests in those cases does absolutely nothing. It's not reviving pelvic floor function. It's not enhancing nitric oxide. They can take 20 milligrams of dialfil and still not get an erection. Estrogen's in a reasonable place down there, which is good. It's not fucking with intrapenile blood flow dynamics as it does when it's too high. They're getting nothing. They can even have kind of higher end of the reference range dihydrotestosterone on the blood work. They're getting nothing. No erections, no sex drive. None of it's coming back. But these guys get on 100 milligrams of prop every other day, or 60 a prop and 3 pumps transcranial cream every day with a low dose of HCG, maybe some DHA and pregnenolone, and, you know, within a month they're getting spontaneous erections back. They have sexual desire. They have sex erections adequate for sex. How do you explain that? Well, again, the clinical research on androgen deprivation explains it perfectly. You know, you've got smooth muscle destruction and all these intrapenile blood flow and muscle function impairment problems that come as a result of androgens. Androgens also, as I've been mentioning, control the strength of the pelvic floor muscles. If you got a weak ischiocavernous muscle, well, you're not keeping blood trapped in the penis. And guess what? I don't think any amount of Kegels are going to help that situation in the presence of inadequate quantity of androgens. There are cases where you need higher levels of testosterone, okay? Now, listen, if you don't have any of these problems and you haven't been androgen deprived for a while and your erections work pretty okay, or they're like mildly impaired, but you know, you haven't been super hypogonadal for a while and you can still get an erection, it's just not like catastrophically bad, well then yeah, you probably should go to between 700 and 1,000 total test, high end of the reference range free testosterone. Estradiol will sit in a reasonable place between 25 and 45 in that case. And you can ride off into the sunset, be anabolic, feel good, have confidence, get masculinity, and generally be a lot more healthy. And that's where you should stay. That's where you should go. I don't want to make the point. I don't want people to get this confused that I'm suggesting that people go on like excessively superphysiologic doses of testosterone to be at 2,000 plus all of the time. You know, if you can avoid doing that, you should avoid doing that, because regardless of left ventricular hypertrophy, which again is very overblown, I've got echoes. I've got steroid people for 20 years with echoes with no thickening of the ventricles at all. You know, there are other side effects that may come with, elevated testosterone, elevated DHT, not the least of which is obviously acne, but you got overstimulation, you got people that feel anxiety and all matter of subjective things, sleep disruption, etc. that can come from high doses of test. So I'm not suggesting that everybody do that. What I am saying is that you have to leave room for variability between people regarding what dose of testosterone they require, which is usually driven by their history regarding exposure or non-exposure to sufficient amounts of androgens. And in that context, like you've got to approach giving recommendations for people regarding testosterone quantity from the educated perspective of their history, as well as combined with the educated understanding of what happens when a human male is androgen deprived for a long time, specifically deprived of dihydrotestosterone. You have to know that. We're not just talking about replacing testosterone for some people. We're talking about fixing things that nothing else is going to fix. So look, I actually like Dr. Osborne. I think he's a great, smart guy. I'm not sure. It's likely to just get people that have serious sexual dysfunction, which would warrant him to see this other side of necessitating higher doses of testosterone in general for people, whether it's cyclically or otherwise. You know, I've heard him speak about estradiol, you know, and he's right on point. You know, there's a finite fucking place for people that are on just TRT doses, and it's like 25 to 35. But you know, regarding this stuff, I've just been on the other side of this for too long, and I see 900, 1,000, 1,200 not doing anything for people that have sexual dysfunction. But the moment they get on fast-acting stuff, specifically at very high doses, the free test goes up substantially, way above range. And the dihydrotestosterone goes up substantially above range. Well, then they've got movement. You know, they get their erections they're trying to have spontaneous erections. You know, they can feel erections start in the first month. They're happening out of nowhere. Month 2, month 3, month 4, if the protocol is right and they're able to tolerate higher doses of androgens, then they're getting spontaneous erections for sex, and everything is good. Again, I want to make the point. I don't want to encourage people to go use, get myself up here, you know, super physiologic doses of testosterone. You know, you don't need to be at 2,000. If everything's good and correct and you can function really well at 900, 700 or whatever, do that. But aside from sexual dysfunction, just in terms of energy for people that have been androgen deprived for a while, they're not going to feel good at 700. You know, they're not going to feel good at 900. They'll feel pretty okay at 900, right? But these guys are going to need to be 1,200, 1,300, 1,500, substantially above the range free testosterone. They're going to have to manage estradiol because that becomes problematic at that point, usually for people, generally speaking. And those people will have energy and feel good and have vitality and be able to put muscle on at 1,500, whereas at 900, 800, etc., they're kind of not anabolic and they don't have energy. They're feeling fatigued throughout the day. Again, exogenous testosterone is not the same. This is my opinion. This is a lot of other specialists' opinion out there, including Dave Lee, including Keith Nichols, including fucking Vigorous Steve probably. It's not the same as your endogenous testosterone, whether that's at the genetic expression level, the AR level, some other level, we just don't know. Metabolic level in terms of how you're breaking down the testosterone. Sometimes people need higher doses. All right, boys, as I said in the beginning, look, I'm a coach on TRT, and that's primarily what I do. A good degree of my work is fixing sexual dysfunction, but also restructuring TRT protocols. I mean, there are some bad protocols out there, a lot of them. And I think there's a great lack of understanding of exactly how to navigate through changes in TRT protocols, as well as just the simple use of fast-acting stuff, which changes people's lives and has a completely different effect than something like testosterone and cypionate. Anyway, for long-standing sexual dysfunction, you got to hire me for 3 months or 6 months, and then we get to work together to really get to the bottom of it, try various protocols that are proven to work to get this situation resolved. If you need me to look over your protocol and change it in the direction of aligning with some of your goals and fixing inadequacies in your TRT protocol, hire me for just a call and a consult where I'll design your protocol for you. You can do that, all that stuff in under a minute at livecortex.com. Again, boys, source list. In some cases, you're going to need to circumvent your clinic and go get your own DHT, high potency DHT gel, DHT powder. You're going to need to try Proviron, which isn't available in the States. You're going to need to run Primo as your estrogen control, and that's the only way that you can dial in on TRT. You're going to not want to pay $250 for 10,000 IU of HCG and instead get 10 vials of 5,000 IU HCG for substantially cheaper. Anyway, all that stuff is in source list. You'll make your money back literally on your first purchase. Go buy it down the description of this video. Lastly, this will be the last week that Torque, my nootropic stack, which is basically like Adderall without the side effects, is buy one, get one free. The code is on the screen. We've extended it through February. Link and code is down in the description of this video. All right, boys, it has been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. Like the video makes a huge difference. Shows our video out to more people. Will bring our video much more to the forefront in your feed on YouTube. Sub to the channel if you want more breakdowns like this on TRT, hormone hacking, everything you can think of regarding this topic. Please sub to the channel. I am out for a couple days, so no content for tomorrow, Friday. I'll be back just in time to do content on Saturday morning, a live stream, so 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Be there. Make sure you're signed up to get notices on the channel because we'll notify you when we're going live. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great week. I'll talk to you boys in the next one.